I'm Elisa Parker. It is the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. It's where ideas inspire activism, and it's one of my favorite festivals. It's one of the largest festivals of its kind in the world. And we need these stories more than ever, and also to feature and highlight these incredible people doing incredible things for our planet. It's so important right now. I'm so thrilled and honored to introduce our next guests. We have Bev and Nuskmata, who are joining us from Canada, from BC here. And the film is called The Spirit Who Swims, and it is a phenomenal film, really highlighting the stories of the salmon and the communities that are sustained and integrated with that. So welcome, Bev and Nuskmata, is that correct?
Yeah.
Welcome to Wild and Scenic, and you said this is your first, this is the first festival where you could be here to hight this film.
This is our first film festival ever.
Ever?
Yeah.
First
ever.
film festival ever. Okay.
Yeah, it's been really great. We've gone to see some of the other films, and unfortunately we have to leave a little early, but yeah, it's been great.
Well, we're honored to have you here.
Yeah.
We're honored to have you. This is such a beautiful film, and I love the process of really, there's such a beautiful job of weaving the community with the salmon and the trek that they are making, right? So the stories are tapping into each of those areas all the way up to, we look at watersheds up to the lake. We'll talk about that. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your reasoning to tell this story right now? And also the organization that you are both part of as the president and director with that as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, stories like this need to be told far and wide. Just the connection that everything is connected. People think of themselves, too many people think that they're separate from the natural world, and they're not. So, like when we say a prayer, other people, when they say a prayer, they end with Amen. When we say a prayer, we end with all my relations, and that's not just people. That's the winged, the four-legged, the finned, and even as one elder said, even the rocks. Everything is connected. So that's the message that we're trying to get out. And I'll let my daughter talk about our organization.
Yeah. Our organization is the Moccasin Footprint Society, and this film, The Spirit Who Swims, is a project of that to help raise awareness around not only salmon protection and water, but the communities who depend on them.
Speaking of footprint, there's even a part in the film when you're at one of the salmon jumps what would you call that? I mean, nowadays they'll have salmon ladders, but it's a fish camp.
Yeah.
There's a fish camp there, and there's actually a spot on the rock that he calls the footprint.
Oh, yeah. Well, all along, I mean, we're so interconnected. We have stories all along the river, and this is their story of how the salmon came to their territory. And Roger Adolph is the one that's telling that story. So that's important to him to know. I mean, in every culture, they have stories about coming into being or whatever, and that is the Lillooet story about how the salmon came to their territory.
How did you go about in developing this film? How did you go about selecting and choosing the people that are featured in it? Because there's individuals that are featured at certain parts of the river and the watershed.
Well, the Indigenous world is not. We're all connected, and we all know somebody. And if I met somebody here, I bet you anything, at some point we would come. We would find somebody in common that we know.
You would,
and
especially
so
because it's Nevada City, California.
Yeah. So when we were looking at the film, my husband and I, we knew. He's the one that picked the ones from Musqueam and the ones from Lillooet, and I knew them as well. But he's the one, and then I picked the ones from the Quesnel Lake area and up in the Duck Health area. So, it was just a matter of who do we think would be best. So we know all these people. We're all connected, and we all have the same beliefs. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what were there any surprises for you or anything new that you learned in the process of of helping to be a conduit to tell these stories, and of the salmon too. I mean, because there's some really rich, wonderful stories in this, and how it's been part of family traditions for years and years.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was the social event of the year when the salmon would be coming. Like we have the moccasin footprint, we have the moccasin telegraph, and knowing where the salmon are coming up the river, we knew where they were, and we knew when to go down and fish, and so everybody would be down to the river, and it was a magical time of year. But I think the one thing that surprised me was when we were up in the last community, and they had their fish weirs, and they were forced to use the nets instead, and they killed more salmon. I didn't realize that. We still, in our territory, still fish the traditional way we always have, and so that little bit surprised me.
What is the traditional way?
Well, you saw in Lillooet where the guy is down on the rocks. Ours are not that steep, but we still fish that way. And when you're down on the river, you have to know the river. You can't just go and fish. You have to know what rock to step on, where to put this foot and where to put the other foot, and you have to be tied up, and you have to know where the net will go in the river. So it's kind of it's a bit of science there, to catch the salmon. So yeah.
And Nuskmata, what were you hoping as far as messaging for the world around this film, and how does that incorporate to the work that you both and others who are part of this organization are doing?
Well, at Moccasin Footprint Society, we're really grassroots based, and so all of the work that we do is guided by the communities that we work in. And so we are primarily in the Secwepemc homelands, where my mother's from, and the community of Quetzalt and surrounding northern Secwepemc. And also on my dad's side is the Nuxalk Nation. And so we have very grassroots driven work, and it's all about protecting the lands that we're from, because we are still deeply connected, and we still fish and we hunt and we harvest, and we have our ceremonies and know where all of our villages are. So it's really based around protecting that way of life and protecting those lands and waters. And so with this film, it really highlights those communities, the connections, our dependence on water and on salmon, and on our collective responsibility to protect that. So those are the messages that I think are really important with this film.
Well, and with collective responsibility, I mean, it points out in this film when they're up in the lake, and right here in Nevada City, we've experienced mining that's detrimented our land here. Can you speak to that a little bit? And then also, when you hear a story like that, you're like, oh, how do we go forward with that? What does restoration look like? How does that, in breaking certain things with traditions, and the salmon run, for example, it can seem overwhelming sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mining industry is, it's the biggest secret that you've never heard about, and they're very slick, and they have a lot of money, and they have formulas that work on small communities. And so I heard that you had a win here recently, which is amazing, which really shows that there's been a lot of community work done. And I think that's the really important piece, is to track the water, track the money, and make sure that you're really engaged with your community, because they put a lot of money into trying to convince us that we don't have any power and that we don't have any sway, and we do. So congratulations on that. And I think the other thing is just to remember that all of our water and all of our communities are connected. So that's a really important piece of the work.
What do you want to tell everyone about why it's so important to know this story, how it applies to all of our everyday lives, why they need to go see this film? I'll speak, or both of you.
Go ahead.
The Spirit Who Swims is a really powerful film in that it talks about and shows the relationship of communities really around the world who we all depend on water, we depend on our food systems, and we have a critical role in that. We're not separate from those systems. So this shows a piece of the world where we're from, and the power of that connectivity, the power of community, and the importance of taking that personal responsibility of where you are.
And even though that this film focuses specifically on the Fraser River, you take any river in the world and the stories will be the same.
Stories are the same. Bev and Nuskmata, thank you so much for being here. We're so honored that you selected this as being your first festival to participate. It's a beautiful film. I wish you much success in broadening and sharing the story, and let's see, and also just the success in salmon, you know, just to keep it going. It's such an important story to know of. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm Elisa Parker. This is Wild and Scenic, and we'll be right back. Okay. Thank you so much.